What's up? Welcome to part 1 of Crash Course AP American Government. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Pluralism. Pluralism describes a theory that views politics as a conflict among many different interest groups. So this is very representative of American government, as there are many different interest groups that are constantly colliding with each other trying to push their ideals. It also says that the political decision-making is characterized by bargaining and compromise, and many times lobbyists from these interest groups are going to bargain with the politicians to get their message across. Democratic Republic. This is the type of system we have in the United States, and it's a republic in which representatives are elected by the people, and these representatives make and enforce laws and policies. So we don't have a direct democracy. Not every person directly can vote on things, but they can vote for representatives who will hopefully represent their views. Direct democracy. So this is a system of government that came from Greece, and in this type, political decisions are made by the people directly, so there aren't elected representatives or the elite to make decisions for them. And it's probably best attained in small political communities because it's easier to organize and get everyone's vote that way. Checks and balances. This is a major principle of the American system of government where each branch of the government can check the actions of others. So between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, they constantly have rules such as veto or overriding vetoes or legislation to check the power of the other branch or two branches to make sure they're not too powerful. Separation of powers. This is pretty similar. It talks about the principle of dividing government powers among different branches of government. So the legislative branch is mainly in charge of writing legislation and controlling how spending and taxes works. The executive branch is in charge of enforcing these laws and making sure things on a national level are actually working the way they're supposed to. And the judicial branch is in charge of making sure laws actually follow guidelines and follow the ways that humans have designed them to work so that they enforce human rights. So these three branches, they work together, but their powers are separate to make sure that not one is too powerful. Types of powers. There are many different types of powers, such as express. This is when the powers are specifically given to the federal government, and they're also known as delegated powers, and they can't be used by state governments. There's also implied powers. These are powers that are inferred from the express powers that allow Congress to carry out its function. So these can include the necessary and proper clause from Article 1, Section 8. So they're not explicitly written, but they can be used if need be. Reserve powers are powers that the Constitution does not give to the national government, and they're kept by the states, and the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution provides for this. Concurrent powers are powers that are jointly held by the national and state governments. So in this respect, these two levels of government will share these powers and try to work together to create the best solution. And inherent powers are powers the Constitution is presumed to have delegated to the national government because it is the government of a sovereign state within the world community. So in this type of power, the power is given to the federal level that has the most power. Federalism. This is a system of government in which power is divided by a written constitution between a central government, so in the US, the federal government, and regional or subdivisional governments. In the US, that would be states or local levels. And each level must have some domain in which its policies are dominant and some genuine constitutional guarantee of its authority. So in the US, this is provided by the 10th Amendment, where states are given certain rights that the federal government cannot impede on. Dual federalism. This is also known as layer cake federalism, and it's a system in which the states and the national government each remain supreme, and they have own powers within their own sphere. So the doctrine says that the nation and state are co-equal sovereign powers, but neither the state government or the federal government should interfere into the other state, sort of like in a layer cake like this. On the other hand, there's cooperative federalism, also known as marble cake federalism, and it's a theory that states and the national government should cooperate in solving problems, such as like in a marble cake, the different layers are mixed together. In this way, these two organizations have to work together. Of course, that's hard because states may have different interests than the federal government. Mandates. This is a directive from the national government ordering the states to do something. Sometimes it can be funded, and other times it can be unfunded. Usually mandates come about because of a specific need. So there are highway safety mandates, such as wearing seatbelts, because people need to be kept safe. Sometimes these mandates come with grants and aid. One example is the block grant. This is when federal programs that provide funds to state and local governments for general function areas, such as criminal justice or mental health programs. These local governments can then take this money and choose to use it however they want. Categorical grants, on the other hand, are federal grants to states or local governments that are meant for specific programs or projects. So if a grant is for federal highways, for example, it cannot be used to make local roads. Commerce Clause. This is a section of the Constitution in which the Congress is given the power to regulate trade among the states and with foreign countries, and it's frequently used and also abused because of so many things dealing with money and commerce in nature. Supremacy Clause. This is a constitutional provision that makes the Constitution and federal laws superior to all conflicting state and local laws. This states that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and many times state laws cannot override this. Civil liberties. These are personal freedoms that are protected for all individuals. Typically, they involve restraining the government's actions against individuals and the government interfering on people's rights too much. This can also be contrasted with civil rights, which are generally rights that were passed in the 1960s that are used to help ensure the rights of frequently discriminated groups such as minorities. Civil disobedience. This is a nonviolent public refusal to obey allegedly unjust laws. So in the US, Martin Luther King Jr. really practiced this to try to get rid of the discrimination from Jim Crow era laws in the 1960s. Separate but equal doctrine. In 1896, Plessy v. Ferguson, the Supreme Court upheld that separate but equal facilities did not void the Equal Protection Clause established by the 14th Amendment. As a result, the Jim Crow era allowed for many businesses to discriminate people based on separate but equal and their skin color. And for many years, this was the law of the land until Brown v. Board of Education helped to repeal some of this. 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause, also known as the Due Process Clause, and this is very important. So this is an amendment that was passed after the Civil War, and it declared that all citizens were entitled to equal protection under the law, and that their due process rights, fundamental rights that they had, could not be violated by states or the national government in cases where they might be tried. So this is very important because many cases have been based off of this, establishing the personal rights of people. Selective incorporation. This is the process by which the Supreme Court has selectively applied the Bill of Rights to state law through the 14th Amendment. So by using the 14th Amendment, it can force its way into state laws, even if state laws try to repeal this act or try to not make it enforceable. In this way, it really allows the federal government to step in and ensure all American citizens' rights, even when sometimes states don't want to enforce that themselves. Types of polls. There are many different types of polls for elections and primaries. One type is the opinion poll. This is a method of systematically questioning a small selected sample of respondents who are deemed representative of the total population. Groups like Gallup and news organizations use this type of poll to see who is sort of in the lead or who is popular at the time. An exit poll is a poll that is taken at randomly selected polling places after citizens have placed their votes, but sometimes it's not totally accurate, because people might not tell the truth after they have made their decisions. Benchmark polls. These are polls that are conducted at the beginning of a campaign to establish baseline levels of voters' perceptions, knowledge, and opinions of a candidate. So many campaigns might try to use a benchmark poll to test the waters and see if their candidate is actually popular to begin with. Political socialization. This is the process by which people acquire political beliefs and attitudes, and most commonly it happens in young people. And it can be swayed by many different factors such as public opinion, school, things that teachers will teach them, family. So many families might have a set of ideologies that they grow up with, and also religion, because religion can oftentimes tell us how to live or give us guidelines for ways to live. Free rider problem. This is the difficulty interest groups face in recruiting members when the benefits they can achieve benefits everyone around. So one example would be the environment. Environmental groups might want to lobby for environmental protections, but some people might not be so lit about the environment. So as a result, they don't help support this environmental group's efforts. However, when the environmental group succeeds, everyone benefits from the new protections. Interest groups. This is an organized group of individuals who share common objectives and actively attempt to influence policymakers. There are many different types of interest groups in the United States, composing of many different ideals and ideas they're trying to promote. One example would be the National Rifle Association, which really lobbies for gun rights and the Second Amendment. Lobbyists. Many interest groups have lobbyists. This is an organization or individual whose sole job is to attempt to influence legislation and the administrative decisions of the government. Many times they're paid a lot of money to, in a sense, bribe officials to the way that they want and what their interest group is trying to promote. Dealignment versus realignment. This is a political process. So in dealignment, this is a decline in party loyalties that reduces long-term party commitment. Many times, if a political party starts doing things wrong or is at the center of a scandal, we see dealignment as people start to move away from political groups. Realignment, on the other hand, is a change in the size or composition of party coalitions or in the nature of issues that divide the parties. So, many times, political parties will realign when a new candidate starts to come in. Bernie Sanders has helped to realign the Democrats to a more liberal side, and Donald Trump has come in and created this new coalition of drain the swamp people against the old Republican establishment. Realignments typically occur within an election cycle or two, but they can also occur over a long period of time, such as a decade. Divided government. This occurs when one major political party controls the presidency and the other controls the chambers of Congress. In this case, it's very hard for legislation to be passed because one group wants to go one way and the other wants to go the other way, and compromise is hard to get reached. Electoral college. This is a group of people called electors that are selected by the voters in each state and the District of Columbia. This group officially elects the president and vice president of the United States. So in reality, the election of the president is indirect. The number of electors in each state is determined by a formula. This formula is the number of representatives from the House in each state plus the number of senators in that state. So in each state, it would of course be +2 because each state has 2 senators. Political party. This is a group of political activists who organize to win elections. In the United States, the two main groups are the Republicans and the Democrats. Together, they operate the government and help to determine public policy. Sometimes they're run by political machines, and these are groups that have lots of clout, and they have a set of ideologies, which they call a platform and they run on. Many people will vote for a political party because they find that this political party aligns with much of their ideology. Swing voters. This describes voters who are frequently swinging from one party to another, and collectively, states that have a lot of swing voters come to be known as swing states, or battleground states. These states, they might vote for one person in one election and a different person from a different political party in another one. So candidates really want to go to these states and make sure to get the vote. Australian ballot. This is a secret ballot that is prepared, distributed, and tabulated by the government officials at public expense. So since 1884, all U.S. states have used it because it's seen as a fairly secure way, and it's also seen as a fair way because the U.S. government is funding it, so poorer areas will not be at a disadvantage. Coattail effect. This is the influence of a popular candidate on the electoral success of other candidates on the same party ticket. In the 2018 midterms, a lot of Republicans wanted to jump on the Trump train to benefit from his victory in 2016. The effect is an increase in party column ballot, or an increase in the straight ticket voting, where many people decide to directly vote for all the candidates in a single party. Voter turnout. This is the percentage of citizens taking part in the election process, the number of eligible voters who actually turn out on election day and decide to cast their ballots. This number fluctuates. On presidential years, it's usually around 60%, and in midterm years, it's around 40%. Caucus. This is a meeting of party members designed to select candidates and propose policies. In the United States, Iowa is always first with their caucus, and in this one evening, many people will come together, talk about the candidates, and then go vote. open primary, closed primaries, and blanket primaries. In an open primary, this is a primary election in which voters may choose which party they want to vote for when they enter the polling place. They don't have to predefine. In a closed primary, this is a type of primary in which the voter is limited to choosing candidates of the party of which he or she is a member. They usually have to register with a political party beforehand. And in a blanket primary, which was used by California, in this type of election, each voter may choose to vote for candidates from both parties. In the United States, this type of primary would allow you to vote for both Republicans and Democrats in the early elections. Well, that's it for this one. Part 2 is over here on the left, and you can find the full AP playlist over there on the right. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share with your friends. Thanks so much for watching, and hope to see you in the next one.